Hey, it's Rob Beeler from Beeler.Tech. I'm here with MSG for another look at the quarter, Q3 2018. And Matt, you went through and looked at and listened to all of those earning reports again.
27 this time.
27. That's a lot. That's a
I
lot.
know.
And
I know.
it's a great to just have someone do that, because I will tell you, I did not listen to 27. I listened to one, the one you
Which one did you listen
recommended.
to? The trade desk, right?
That's right. That's right. Based on your recommendation,
You listen to
so,
the
so
right
we can
one.
talk about that. But across those 27, you took that and you came up with some overall takes about Q3. Let's dive in and start
The
to talk
one
about
thing I want to add, as you and I were talking, I think it's all about pattern recognition. And
it.
I think what I did is after listening to 27 and reading about them, I sort of saw the patterns, and then that became my overall summary that we're going to go through right now.
Great, great. So the first thing, politics and political advertising. So what did you see with Q3?
Well, there's many companies that talked about having a really big political season in September, and it's probably going to spill into Q4 as well because the elections didn't happen to the 5th. Bigger than they've ever seen before. I think my takeaway, as I wrote, it was more like a presidential year than a midterm year, right? And you saw all those states fighting for, Congress, governor, the whole thing. Now, it also makes me think that if you and I are going to do something in the future, political is a great space to be in, right? And I also believe that 2, 4, 8, 16 years ago, it was about the presidential election, right? The 0 and 4 and 8 and 16, and now I think it's every 2 years because the midterms become so important, so complicated and so controversial. But I think going forward, you might see a cycle where every 2 years feels like a presidential year now.
Well,
Like I don't see that stopping.
I almost wonder if it's going to just be continual. Obviously, there'll be bumps around elections, right? But it seems like every week is another political battle happening, and people are using advertising to support their positions and try to sway people,
Right. And
right?
then
So
your question is, when does 2020 elections start with all the advertising? My gut feeling is going to happen before it ever happened before. Right. So
yeah,
this time next year, we're probably talking about political as well. You're just starting or growing.
that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, the days of the political hangover perhaps are done, and maybe this is just a continual stream. Um,
And the other thing
talking
about
about
the other thing about political is, like, I think political happens, from everything I took away, mostly local television, right? So, and then I think it's also the big guys in Facebook and Google,
mhm,
right? So
mhm.
Facebook never mentioned the word political in their quarterly earnings, but my gut feeling tells me political was a big part about why they had such a nice increase in revenue.
It's interesting because, like, New Jersey, which is not considered a battleground state, nothing but political ads all through this past particular
Oh, and
quarter.
then you also heard, this is so much fun. You also heard, like someone say, well, for the 5 or 6 days leading up to the election, or the week or two before the election, it was all political ads back to back to back. And then there was sort of like a hangover of everyone else, like all the traditional auto or telephony all had to come in on November 5th or November 6th, right? So you had
Right.
this sort of catch-up effect as well.
So that means, well, and again, I guess that you would think that would mean better news for traditional publishers, but you're seeing that being more flattened down with one exception.
Right. And then the one exception I had, you sort of jumped into that one, is flat down. The New York Times digital business, I think, was up 17%, which is remarkable. I feel like they're the only one that's above the fray, above everyone else with what I looked at. Right. I think they just have the brand and the power of the brand where advertisers want to come to them.
Got it. Got it. So right, right. And then in terms of looking again, just going down these particular trends that you've identified, CTV and OTT. What's going on in that particular space?
Oh, it feels like I sort of caught this one, 6, 9 months ago, that it's getting powerful and bigger. The bigger players seem to be Roku and the Trade Desk, and many linear TV companies like Viacom is getting it into it. It feels like you have that 70 billion U.S. advertising marketplace that's sort of holding steady, But then you have these OTT, CTV platforms kicking in there and trying to grab share with, AT&T mentions the higher CPMs. Everyone's mentioning the higher CPMs they get in the targeting. And it feels like it's happening now. We're seeing it. Now, the big question becomes to me is, if I want to buy CTV or OTT, where do I go? Right? And I've had sort of two takeaways. Number one is you go to Roku, but you're sort of limited to the Roku world. You could probably go to DBM as well, but Google never talks about that. Or you go to the Trade Desk. And the Trade Desk, it feels like it's becoming one-stop shopping for buying OTT, CTV across all the many platforms. Now AT&T App Nexus is trying to do that as well, right? That's why AT&T bought App Nexus, but I'm not sure if they have the engineers, and I'm not sure if App Nexus is the best, OTT, CTV platform. I always said that I thought that AT&T should have bought the Trade Desk, for an extra couple $1 billion versus, you're nodding your head, right, versus App Nexus. So I think there's a nice play there with the Trade Desk. And I also believe, Viacom and CBS all mention OTT and how it's so powerful. Disney mentioned how Hulu is great for that, right? So it feels like that's all happening, and it feels like there's a lot of investments going into there and a lot of ad products being built into that particular space, right? And you don't hear a lot about new ad products being built, but it feels like in that OTT space, there's all these new ad products being developed, a lot of money going into that as well.
And would you say you don't hear much from Facebook and Google in that particular?
Well, Facebook, you hear about video all the time. It feels like they're always trying something new, but it feels like the tried and true CBS, Viacom, NBC, Comcast, Disney, Hulu are just chugging along and doing it really well.
It reminds me, again, you've started this conversation for a long time of this idea that digital deserves all those TV dollars based on where people spend all their time. And we'd always talk about that in these general terms. What everyone forgets, of course, is that the broadcasters are not going to let go of that revenue and go, let's democratize it and share it. It's all about owning that revenue, right?
And then of the broadcasters, it feels like, as ratings go down, they go down slightly. It feels like MSNBC had a good quarter because it was sort of political and the ratings were up. The other interesting thing about TV is everyone pretty much said they had the best upfront they ever had. Everyone pretty much said scatter market's up 20 to 30%. Yet all the advertisers are down to flat to down 5%. Right. So some of the math doesn't work for me, but it's not going down as much as other companies are.
And so you think upfronts are still the best way for the industry to approach this?
Well, you sort of jump to something else. I think that the TV upfront business, the more I think about it, is absolutely genius, right? How they have this big party in, February, March, April. They start the negotiations in the summer, and then they lock in for the September season, right? And it's 1-year deals. They lock in. It's all simple. And you go back to the display business on digital side. It's a quarterly RFP business. When you think about it, it's insane. And I think the word I used in here, I'm looking at right now, is I think the quarterly RFP business for display is strangling the display business. Right? Think about it. You're a marketer, you're a publisher, you get these RFPs coming every quarter, the same thing over and over, recreating the wheel. It's chaos.
I mean, it feels like upfronts is a relationship. It's probably the only thing more efficient than programmatic, in the sense that if you want to buy a particular property and you make the deal, then the smaller details just get worked out over the course of the year. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong.
I got my $30 million to spend, my $50 million to spend. Here it is. I'm doing the whole year. Let me just figure out some of the minutia about it. Yes, go.
Right. Take my money and spend it, and just make sure that I get my return.
Right. And if the ratings are down, you give me a couple more spots. Everything's copacetic.
Right. Versus, what was the viewability on that one campaign that ran during this time period? Yes, exactly. We've overthought this.
The question is, I think the RFP business is sort of slowly dying and going away. It's a shame. But is there any way we could get like the 2020 campaign, the 2020 world, to have the RFP business for the display digital side be yearly instead of quarterly? Like, who could figure that out? So I got 3 business ideas so far. Okay. So we're doing political in a big way. right? We're doing OTT, CTV in a big way, and then we're going to try to figure out how to go to a yearly RFP business for display.
It sounds like we just have to throw a really good party, and
Right.
we could hit all three. We could
Right,
hit all
and,
three.
and that's my pattern recognition of everything that I've seen happen, based on the publicly traded companies.
There you go. There you go. Well, some of the things, again, some of the other patterns that you saw, self-serve platforms.
Right. So about the self-serve platforms, right? You have, of course, Facebook and Google, right? Snap and Twitter have done it as well. Criteo, which is having a bunch of issues, is putting a lot of energy into a self-serve platform. I assume AppNexus might try to do something self-serve, but as Ari Paparo told me, self-serve is kind of has a bad side as well. Because once you go self-serve, you have other people coming and knocking into the system, sort of buying stuff. You'll know who they are. Right. And I also think self-serve is much more complicated than any of us think, which is why not too many companies are doing it. Like, will the trade desk ever go self-serve? I don't know. But then they're sort of, if they don't, they're limiting to their advertisers. And if they do, they're opening it up to other people.
Yeah. That's it always feels to me like something where it's a valve, right? When you need revenue, you move toward that self-serve. But to Ari's point, I always follow what Ari says, right?
Yes.
You just open yourself up to other forces, if you will.
Right, and I think I wrote this about before. Like, Facebook is self-serve. They have 4, 5, 6 million advertisers. Not that many are really verified. I still think that every Facebook advertiser needs to send someone to a physical Facebook store, walk in there, here's my ID, take a picture, here's my passport, and now I'm good to buy.
Right.
Might not ever happen, but I feel like that's the way you need to go.
There's something, right, exactly. Well, with all of this, again, another statement you make, and love for you to expand on it, is the continual struggle of the agencies.
Yeah, so agencies, the holding companies, they are each having their own type of issues. They sort of try to call themselves platforms. They're not really there. They got hundreds of brands underneath the holding company they're trying to do. Marketers are going all in more in-house. It feels like they're having a really tough situation. But is there some next generation agency or holding company that evolves that sort of, could be more political, could be more self-serve, can be on a better platform, evolve into something different than what they are today? And I don't know of one today of a new breed agency. There's small ones I know of, like Kepler, but I don't think there's any big ones out there that have really taken off.
Right. Well, I think that's the holding company to an agency to a platform. All of those just seem to, like, that's not what. The
whole notion of the holding company doesn't make any sense to me of what's happening today in the industry. Now, the one thing that I will point out is that, Google, Facebook, of course, Amazon keeps on growing and growing, as you see in the report. Amazon might be more complicated to buy because no one's really bought that self-serve platform that they have, Facebook and Google. Are there next generation agencies that evolve that are getting you very good at buying Amazon? Like, could that be a little niche they figure out? Right? Or is there a next generation agency that sits on top of Amazon, Facebook, and Google and has one interface?
We should talk about that.
So think about it. If I'm an advertiser, right, what do I really need? Right, I need Amazon, Facebook, Google, and maybe the trade desk. Those 4, and that's probably and then of course some traditional TV as well. Those 4, but then I have 4 separate people logging into 4 separate consoles. Is there any way to put that all together holistically? Don't know.
Right.
There's another idea. See, I think this whole chat now is not about what we saw happen. It's what we saw happen and how we turn it into new business.
We're really not doing this for anyone else but ourselves. Just coming up.
We're just our brainstorming.
Then just sharing it free, and then people can give us some credit. Like, that's my whole goal is for people to remember me at some point and pay for my retirement. But one thing I did want to circle back with the platforms that I saw and what you said is that it sounded like Snap and Twitter are starting to pay attention to advertising.
Yes.
Right. And at the same time, Netflix is just sitting on the sidelines. Just it feels like they have a switch. They can just turn that thing on.
So I have another thing that I'm writing my media in the next 3 to 5 years, which we'll talk about, right? And I think when I wrote that, it's like when Netflix decides to go into advertising, it's going to be game over, right? They'll do advertising differently. Like they will develop they'll develop a new ad product that no one's ever seen before. It won't be a 30-second ad. It'll be something else. It'll be interstitial like. It might be product placement. I don't know. Right? But if they get into this advertising space of that 70 billion, take 10% and move it over there immediately? What advertiser would not want to be there?
Right. And conform.
And by the way, and what's the margins on the advertising business for them as well? 90%?
Right. Yeah.
So I had this other idea, like, what if, ready for this one? What if Netflix bought The Trade Desk, which is arguably the best in OTT, right? Use the Trade Desk platform to actually buy Netflix. Is that game over?
That would be
think about that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's yet at the same time, one of the things, let's talk about The Trade Desk. Okay. And again, that's, your recommendation is that if of all the earning reports, you felt like that one is one, again, depending on what your interests are, that's a really good one to listen to.
So my other prediction is one of the big media companies buys The Trade Desk, not only because it's a great company, but to get Jeff Green to run that media company for the future.
Interesting. Unless Netflix gets there first.
Well,
right?
Netflix is one of those media companies. So yeah, our prediction right now, I'm Scott Galloway. Here's my prediction, right? Netflix buys The Trade Desk.
All right, you heard it. Mark it down. I like it.
You heard it first. It might take 12 or 18 months, but it'll happen.
But at the same time, one of the things that was in that report, and again, one of your observations is The Trade Desk is independent, right? Again, people buy Facebook. They go to Facebook for Facebook. They go to Google for Google, right? The Trade Desk is filling in all those other.
Right. They go to Facebook, Google for Google, Amazon to Amazon. They might have a next generation holding company agency sitting on top of all that. And when they want to buy TV, they do old school traditional relationships for the upfront. And then they're buying OTT, and CTV, and they use The Trade Desk to buy everything.
Right.
Not a bad model.
No, and it's great. And there is a part, I think, quite honestly, is that when The Trade Desk does get acquired, right, that independence, that piece is going to go away. I mean, again, unless, because people aren't playing this game to be to democratize advertising, they're doing it to win, right?
Right, but if Netflix bought The Trade Desk, right, and put everything inside of the Netflix world, which is big enough and everyone's logged in,
right,
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Maybe that's the best outcome for the industry, as well as just overall for them.
Well, but if that happens, then CBS, NBC, Fox, Disney, what do they do with all their media that's not self-serve, that's OTT, right? I'm not sure what happens over there.
Yeah, and I don't think
they all work together somehow, like Hulu 2.0.
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, it's all going to be about that kind of scale piece, and I think, well, and again, that's what one of the things I've just observed.
That's a great word, which I should have actually put in here. Scale,
right? And I think what we're seeing with Meredith, right, is that people attempted to do scale.
Yep.
And when scale doesn't work, you pick up all that baggage and you need to get rid of it. And that's where some of these bigger players are just going to have to sit there and figure out how they piece together. So what else about the Trade Desk? Again, let's pitch that particular earnings report. What else did you hear in there?
Oh, I mean, I was just blown away by how Jeff Green gives the best overview of the ecosystem better than anyone else. Like, you listen to the first 10 or 15 minutes and he tells you what's going on, and I believe him because it feels it's very factual based. It's about the overview of the ecosystem and the Trade Desk, but it's together where it's nice. And you just realize that they see so much and they have such great information and they're telling you what's happening and it's believable. And if you'd have to read the whole thing and go point by point. It just I feel like I need to wake up once a month and listen to that and say, okay, let me just get a refresher of what's happening in the ecosystem.
Right. And that's a platform, right? To your point about the agencies before trying to be a platform, I can't see an agency thinking that way from what
But
I've
the
heard.
thing is, I don't think an agency knows any of that stuff. Right? I think
Right.
the agency leaders are up here, and there's people down the bottom. It feels like Jeff Green's like 3 people removed versus 17 people removed of what's happening.
Yeah. Well, let's I and again I'm going to try to turn into a positive spin here. That's how I roll. But we got to talk about display. We got to talk about direct display.
Okay. Well, let me say one thing because I have a point in here. Advertising tends to be lumpy, choppy, turbulent business for traditional media,
Yeah,
right? It goes up and down. It is, I mean, unless you're the big guys, it is very hard to predict. The CEO from Meredith basically said, well, we have no clue what Q1 2019 looks like because we haven't got any RFPs yet, basically, right? Because the RFP cycle redoes itself every quarter,
right.
right? And you might have a big quarter, you might have a good quarter, and then you think it's going to happen again, and something changes and it goes away, right? And the other thing is, there's not too many traditional companies that are public anymore, so it's hard to really get a sense of it. So you take 2 or 3 and you expand upon that. Like Yelp
And,
had, I don't think I listened to Yelp, but Yelp had a very hard quarter. Microsoft, which has LinkedIn, doesn't talk about advertising at all. Apple doesn't talk about advertising at all, right? They just don't. They don't talk about it.
if your business, you're only getting those RFPs heading right into the quarter, you're going to be unable to invest in what you need to do a long-term play, right? Because again,
And if a traditional display publisher, let's say, is 50% programmatic, 50% display, right? The programmatic becomes pretty simple to forecast based on what's happening previously. There's some
sure.
benchmarking out there. It's simple. The RFP business, you think it's going to be one thing, and then it can totally change once you're in the middle of the quarter or what is happening beforehand.
Yeah, I mean,
It's very hard to predict.
RFPs become like home run, swings, right? You're trying to get some deal at a certain size because that CPM is going to be higher than programmatic, most likely, right? So you have to go for it, right? But at the same time, is it taking everyone's attention away from where they need to go and scale and put their business at the right scale?
And then
Right.
what's the renewal rate of those gigantic RFPs that come in? Like that's
Right.
why I think, lumpy, choppy, turbulent. You might win one big RFP for millions of dollars, but is it going to come back the next year?
Right. Right. I think that's part of a concern.
And I think as a
Um,
as a financial person or an operational person, and you want to be more predictable, RFP business used to be predictable. I think it's less predictable today.
Yeah. So understanding your programmatic business, looking at that, and again, investing on that. The reason I brought up the investment again, it's one of my favorite points you've ever made, and maybe I'll have to count the number of times I bring this point up or stop. Is just the need of engineering and development by media companies. If you don't know what next quarter is, how can you even hire anybody? Right?
And one of my favorite comments is Bob Backish at Viacom, where I used to work there, and I think Bob's one of the smartest people out there. Him and Jeff Green, and Bob was talking about Viacom OTT platform, and he said we invented 7 new ad products last quarter or last year in the TV world, and I'm like, that's amazing. You never hear anyone else talking about that. Oh, you never hear the IAB talking about new ad products for the industry, right? They gave up. They're all they do talk about is DTC, right? But and I want to know, what are these Viacom new ad products they developed, and what do they mean and how they work? Right? Is it data driven? Is it a 6-second ad? Is it a 15-second ad? I don't know, but like that's fascinating, and that's what this industry needs: more new, relevant, interesting ad products.
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of a plug, which is I did a conversation with Derek Katz at Bloomberg, and we talked about some of their ad products, and really they've created really an ability to take assets from an advertiser and assemble them and make them data driven, and really it's an operational designed ad unit, right? You create these templates so you can take these pieces, create something out of them, and then get the maximum exposure. And so that's something that's on the Beeler.Tech website to listen to that particular interview.
But is it self-serve?
Not self-serve.
Right.
I think that's That is the big leagues, is to get
Right.
into that
And
to
if
be a
it's not
tech.
self-serve, it's probably put together nicely with some duct tape here and a cut and paste there or something. But you need self-serve, I think, to grow these businesses really big.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so what did we miss? Is there anything that you
Well,
wanted to say?
those are the big pieces. I don't want to go on for 45 minutes. I think people have enough of you and me, but I think we got some really good stuff in there. So let's sort of summarize this whole thing, okay?
Yeah,
Listen to Jeff Green, right? Political is going to be big, continue to be really big, right? I think it's more than just this midterm. I think CTV and OTT are gigantic, right? I think the trade desk is leading that. Agencies might try to figure something out with Amazon down the road. Advertising is lumpy, choppy, and turbulent. It's very hard. Of course, those with logged in users win. You want to be self-serve. And, we saw this coming, or I saw this coming, but, the direct business is getting hard and needs some changes.
yeah, yeah.
I think,
No, I
I
think
think, I think that's the big summary. There's a bunch of detail in there people can read, but I think that's the message you want to get across over and over to everyone.
and there's a lot of detail, right? And I think that that's
And,
that's
and sometimes there's too much detail, but you needed all that detail to be able to sort of get that pattern recognition summary.
right. No, Matt, as always, it's a pleasure to kind of talk through this. Again, we on top of your top points, we shared about 3 or 4 business concepts that people will launch. So hopefully they
Just
remember.
give us some credit. Buy me a sushi meal or a steak dinner. That's all I want.
Exactly. I tend to go for points versus sushi, but that's fine. I'll take sushi as well. Matt, it's great to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to further collaboration with you in 2019.
Oh, I
There's
can't wait. This
too
is
much
fun.
great stuff in here. Let's have some fun with it. And with that, everyone have a great Q4, great end of the year. Good luck.
Thanks, Rob.